Welcome back to Beyond Well. I'm Sheila Hamilton, and today we are about to have a fascinating conversation with Dr. Vieten. This is probably one of the most interesting resumes I've ever read on this air. She is a board-certified clinical psychologist who served active duty from 1998 to 2008. She's the executive director of Warfighter Advance, which provides intense training programs such as the Advance 7-Day for active duty and veteran warfighters, and operational stress and reintegration issues. The Advance is a non-medical 7-day training that uses a variety of means to change the trajectory of a warfighter's post-deployment life. Dr. Vieten, it's so wonderful to talk with you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are we correct in calling it the Advance 7-Day program? Is that how you refer to it among fighters?
Yes, that's the product that that Warfighter Advance provides.
Okay. And Dr. Vieten, how did you get interested in this type of work?
Well, I'm a Navy psychologist, and I originally became interested in this very, very early on, almost 20 years ago in the wars, because it just became very, very clear to me that what we were doing to treat people coming back within the medical model was actually making them worse, and we had to find some other way to do this.
You de-emphasize medicine, diagnoses, and you say you replace it with pride, productivity, some of the values that soldiers are really trained to identify with and feel as if those are the things that they live by. Talk to me about why that's so important.
So we don't actually de-emphasize them. We absolutely outright reject them. We reject all the medical model, the medical language, the medicating, the hard-handed or heavy-handed procedures such as ECT. And the reason is that we're a scientific program, and things that have been shown by science to be harmful and ineffective should not be part of the process. The other reason is that I took an oath to do no harm, and so perpetrating things on my fellow warfighters that are harmful it's out of the question.
Wow. So what role does science play in this?
So everything we do at the 7-Day has scientific efficacy. I mean, obviously there's hard science, there's also soft science, and within the soft sciences you have to look for the best research, and research that is not driven by money or pharmaceutical industry, people who want certain outcomes. But there's a great literature on almost everything that we do, and we're very, very careful to make sure that anything we implement there has a scientific basis.
You know, what I had heard from many other people that were looking into the increase in suicides in the military is there's some belief that it is linked to the high medication rate. Do you believe that as well?
So the scientific evidence is clear that the suicide rate is a direct result of the medication. It couldn't be another way. If you look at the FDA data on the suicide rates and then you look at the FDA data on the prescribing, they vary together. The other thing is that the jury is not out on whether or not these drugs cause people to commit suicide. It is not a correlational relationship. It is a cause and effect relationship.
And do you know the reason behind the effect? Is it because the drugs act on a part of the brain that increases suicidal thinking?
So that is something that cannot really be determined as far as I'm concerned. The cause and effect is shown through studies where they take people that are considered to be healthy normals and they put them onto these drugs and they become floridly suicidal at proportions that are way above the control group. So although they can't say what the mechanism of action is, the cause and effect is just absolutely clear from those types of studies.
Wow. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Mary Neal Vieten. She is a military psychologist and is so influential in the Advanced 7-Day program, which really rejects a medical model as a response to psychological trauma. Why do you, besides the opposition to psychopharmaceuticals, reject the entire medical model? What else is wrong with it?
So the main thing is that it's just basically false advertising. The idea that brain and mind are the same thing is actually it's a tool of marketing, and it's not a tool of reality. Your brain is an organ in your body, and the mind is a construct, and it's the sum of its definition. It cannot get ill. So the idea that that mental illness is actual real illness, like, getting the measles or having a fracture is, again, it's a tool of marketing that people accept that, not a tool of science. And so basically we ask the warfighters who come through our program to make that distinction between what is mind and what is brain. And if something is in that construct realm or in that mind realm, to treat it that way, not to treat it as if it's something medical that would need some kind of treatment.
So I'm really curious, Dr. Vieten, because I know especially in the brains of schizophrenics, they've been able to do imaging that shows a difference in their brains. So if we can see on MRI imaging a difference in the brains of people with these advanced types of what the medical tradition calls mental illness, why wouldn't we popularize it as a brain illness, as something similar to a heart illness?
It's very, very interesting if you look very carefully at that research. It's not imaging of the psychotic experience. And the psychotic experience is, again, it's something where the person who's experiencing that is telling you something, and the person who is listening to that is listening to that. It's not a determination from a medical procedure. It's a determination that a person is psychotic from an interview. So there's no scientific data in that. An MRI cannot tell you whether a person is psychotic because of what's in the picture, or if what's in the picture is there because they're psychotic. It's a picture of their brain in time. It's not diagnostic, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, I get to that. That's an interesting argument.
So the idea that you can see schizophrenia on an MRI is actually, again, it's a marketing ploy. And again, one of the things that is unscientific about the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual is that a concept like schizophrenia is a construct. It's the sum of its definition. And in our culture, it's a bad thing, but you'd only have to walk across the street to find a place where it was a gift. And the person in our culture who's put in the psych ward is the shaman of their community in another culture because they have this amazing gift. It's very interesting that the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, because it is so unscientific, allows for that. It actually says that if your culture has a paradigm for this, it is no longer psychotic.
Wow, incredible. I want to ask you a little bit more about your advanced 7-day plan, because I would think that, is it truly 7 days that warfighters come in and they actually stay in this program for 7 days? Is that how long it takes them to learn these techniques?
Yes. They come in Sunday afternoon, and they start the program that evening, and they graduate on Saturday, the following Saturday, and they're out of there by noon, and that's about how long it takes.
And you place a ton of emphasis on fully informed consent. Why is that?
There's two reasons. One is that sort of the bottom line up front is that I think that most people, the vast majority of people, if they had informed consent for psychiatric drugs and ECT, they would not consent. So that's the sort of the bottom line. But the other reason is that the people who came into our program are very often involved in these very heavy-handed treatments, and they were not informed in any way, shape, or form about what could happen to them. Some of them are in the throes of what could happen to them. They're suffering tremendously because they were not informed. And so we remediate that informed consent literally down to the molecular level so that they understand the diagnostic manual. They understand that everything in that manual is the sum of its definition, a construct and not an illness. And they also then understand the medications and their potential for harm and the fact that they're being treated with these harmful chemicals for a construct, again. So we're very clear to lay this all out for them so that they can make their own decision. We don't try to control the decision process. We just try to provide the information.
And how do you determine if you have a successful outcome, or what is your measurement?
So that's one of the things that we also do not agree with in typical mental health. Mental health has these ideas that the provider or the organization decides what a good outcome is or how people should feel. So you shouldn't have nightmares, you shouldn't have sleepless nights, you shouldn't be anxious, you shouldn't be sad. And instead what we do is we let every warfighter who comes through determine their own outcomes and what their goals are. And most of the time they are not symptom focused. Most of the time they want to just function well enough to go back to school, to re-enter the workforce, to re-engage with their families. We let each and every warfighter determine their own good outcomes, and they tend to be functional outcomes.
Wow. That's really interesting because that's just exactly the opposite of what a medical model would do. They would say, what's your symptom reduction? Are you feeling no more anxiety? Are you not having any flashbacks? Blah, 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 right? So
life is full of those kinds of bumps, and so we just try to be very realistic with people. You're not going to get rid of those bumps.
Yeah. How do people find out about Warfighter Advance, and how do they take part in this program?
So the vast majority of the people who go through the program find out about it from people who've been through the programs. We've actually had to stop advertising because when people leave the program, they call everybody they know who's in the same situation and say, hey, you got to go do this. And so our seats are pretty much filled up by word of mouth from our alumni and our graduates. So that's the way that the vast majority of people, but we have a presence on Facebook, and we do go out to all kinds of veterans events, and probably about 10% of our people come from other means besides our graduates.
And how do you fund Warfighter Advance?
Fundraising.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was thinking about the big war movie, 1917, came out, and the number of soldiers that returned from World War I and World War II with PTSD, and the vast majority of those went through those experiences without being treated with psychopharmaceuticals. And it changed around the Vietnam War, of course, when there was so much access to heroin and kind of they self-medicated, right? But this is the first modern wartime where almost every soldier who has had any kind of trauma gets put on a medication. What would you say that the change in the fighters is because of that?
I think that it's compounded their suffering. I know that it's certainly added to the suicide rate. It's added to the carnage. The numbers just came out that more people have died from suicide from Iraq and Afghanistan than from the entire Vietnam War.
Wow.
And so that means we're way over the 50,000 mark at this point. But I think that has really been compounded. I think the number of people on disability and SSDI is, again, not because of post-traumatic stress, but because of the treatment for post-traumatic stress. I want to be clear about that. The trauma is not what keeps people out of the game. It's the treatment for the trauma that keeps them out of the game.
Wow, that's well said. So one would think that if you're having such good outcomes, especially with the participants in their estimation, that the VA or the Department of Defense would be funding this, are they?
They do not. We do not accept any money from the government whatsoever or any government entities. And there's a reason for that, and that is that they're not getting it right, and they're very, very mired down in the medical model, and we want to be able to be a voice for something else. We're staying independent very, very intentionally so that we can keep our scientific approach and our independent voice.
And then how do the people pay for it? Is the cost of the participation in this advanced 7-day program left up to the soldier?
No. Actually, what we found as we were putting this thing together was that the two barriers to getting better care than you can get from the VA or from the Department of Defense were money and paperwork. The paperwork thing we got rid of by becoming a training model. So we don't take any paperwork on the way in. We don't produce any when they're there, and they don't leave with a label that's going to hurt them on the way out. And that was the one barrier. The other barrier was money. And so we fundraise, and everybody who comes through our program comes on 100% scholarship, door to door, no matter where in the United States of America they are coming from.
Wow, what an incredible program. So what's been the feedback that you've had from people who've gone through this?
Most of them say it's a game changer. We very often get feedback from people saying that it saved their life, certainly that it saved their families. They love their new self off the medication and facing their lives. Sometimes they'll say things like, I came there as a professional patient and I left as a warfighter. They got their identity back. Those are the kinds of feedback that we get, and it's pretty consistent across the board.
Mary, have I missed anything about this incredible program that you want to share with people?
I would say the one thing is that a lot of times people will ask us, again, as if we're a treatment program, what type of aftercare we have. And again, aftercare is a treatment word we would never use. But it is an important concept, what happens to them when they leave. So when they graduate on Saturday, they automatically become members of our alumni association. Again, very carefully chosen language. is a support group that they can participate in a number of ways. If they're local in Maryland, then we do all kinds of things in person. But if they are not local, we have a private Facebook page. We have email things that go out. We have some groups where we have pockets of alumni. They also meet up in Texas and Washington State and different places. So we do take care of them after they leave. Once a month, we have 100% recall of everybody that's been through the program, just to make sure everybody's okay, that they don't need anything, that they don't have any questions or, want to speak to somebody on the staff.
Would you describe what the skill set is that they learn is behavior modification, mindfulness, the tools that many of us should have learned when we were in grade school to be able to actually hold those values that you talked about, integrity and hopefulness and optimism and all the things that we can lose throughout our lifetimes?
So the things you mentioned are absolutely a part of the paradigm for us. What we do is we take skills that soldiers already have, like analyzing a risk-benefit ratio.
Mm-hmm.
We ask them to look at the things that people are offering them and analyze them, and to come out at the end of the week with a smorgasbord of things where there's a great potential for benefit and very little potential for risk. Mindfulness would obviously be on there, meditation, those kinds of things. And so we have them put together this enormous smorgasbord of things and work together on it, because a lot of them come there with tools that they didn't realize that they could share with other people. And then again, using that risk-benefit ratio, when you look at something like taking a drug that could kill you for a symptom like sleeplessness, it makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And when you put it to them that way, they're like, oh, I can figure this out.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful that you're providing this, and it definitely is an alternative to the model that's currently there for the treatment of PTSD as well. So once again, if you just joined us for this is Dr. Mary Vieten, and she's a Navy psychologist and also one of the people behind the Advance 7-day program, which is incredibly helpful for fighters of war. Mary, because the Foundation for Excellence in Mental Health Care supports this program, is there any other way other than contacting the foundation that they can get in touch with you and learn more about this beneficial program?
Sure. We have a website. It's www.warfighteradvance.org. On that website, of course, is everything else you would need. There's phone numbers. Everybody on the staff has an email on there, so you can just click on it and send the person you want to send an email to. There's, of course, a potential to donate through the website, and all the information that talks about our core tenets and why we do things the way we do them is on the website.
And how many chapters do you have right now? How many different places in the country can warfighters go to attend these classes?
So we actually do everything in one location. It's in Charles County in Maryland. The way we do it is when somebody signs up to go to this program, one of our staff members will contact them and book them a plane ticket, and we will fly them in, pick them up at the airport, and bring them out to the program. So there's no reason for us to be all over the country because we bring everybody in.
What a phenomenal thing. Wow, it's been incredibly helpful. Thank you so much, Dr. Vieten. And if you want to find out more, you can just click on the link here at the Foundation for Excellence in Mental Health Care. Thank you again.
You're welcome.